During the peak of its popularity, DVD naturally carried a lot of titles. When it came time for companies to port over their properties to the format, some of the movies were going to be massive sellers, but then there were the titles, either obscure or just lesser ones, that maybe they had no idea how to market. Thankfully, some of these titles had an advantage, maybe before their famous big stars were involved, or perhaps a concept that is easily appealing to people on paper. Unfortunately, more often than not, this results in a cover that does a horrible job of representing what the movie actually is about, and is basically just an excuse to lure unexpected customers into buying your substandard feature. However, sometimes these covers can be insanely inaccurate, it almost turns into a work of art. So because I have nothing better to do with my life, let's look at some examples of DVD covers that seem to miss the point of the movie entirely, some of them even involving films that are absolutely not that obscure. But first, remember to subscribe and hit that like button. Also, check out my website, dansden.net. Anyway, this is a buckle up that is heavily misleading in nature. In 1982, a young Thomas Jeffrey Hanks was a struggling actor whose only major credit was a little-seen horror movie called He Knows You're Alone. At the time, he was about to star in the sitcom Boston Buddies, when he got his first shot at a lead role in the TV movie Mazes and Monsters, a very cheesy, stupid movie of the week about the dangers of getting too caught up in the Dungeons & Dragons craze of the 1980s. Though you wouldn't know that at first glance, because according to this 2000's DVD cover, it's one hell of a labyrinth Da Vinci Code style sword and sorcery tale. Okay, first off, this makes the movie look more exciting than it actually is. It's not a fantasy movie at all. It's a preachy, outdated morality tale on the terrors of D&D. Also, if this image is anything to go by, then Tom Hanks is looking like the oldest 25-year-old I've ever seen. That's what you get for not taking my advice, Tom. You shouldn't have stopped eating your raisins, man. Also, you gotta love the tagline is, "Danger lurks between fantasy and reality," which is honestly the only honest thing about this cover. This one isn't exactly maybe the greatest example of what I'm talking about, but I just wanted to highlight it. Somehow some random title designer thought they could actually get away with this, which, well, for a movie like this, nobody really has anything to say outside of its lead actor. No duh. The first turn on is a 1983 comedy from Troma Entertainment. Like all Troma movies, it did eventually find its way to DVD. The DVD cover doesn't seem bad at first. It's exactly what you'd expect from a comedy of that era. But then you get to this little snippet on top, and well... Do you see where we're going with this one? Okay, can I go to the alternate reality where Vincent D'Onofrio is an Oscar nominee? Because that would be kinda rad. This is clearly a case if someone who put this image or text together knew that D'Onofrio was the only mainstream actor in the cast, and just assumed based off his resume that he was some kind of acclaimed actor. Oh, and repeat after me. Oscar nominee Vincent D'Onofrio has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Love Happy is the last Marx Brothers movie. It's not very good. Groucho is already out of the game with his brothers, and as a result he's barely in the film. Instead, the movie is largely a showcase for Harpo, who has to carry most of the motion picture on his shoulder. Chicho is simply there to support him. While the Marx Brothers were mostly running on fumes at that point, it became very obvious in Love Happy just how much the brothers don't work without Groucho's sarcasm. And outside of the interrogation scene, it's largely a dud in terms of humor. Love Happy would be a pretty anonymous, disappointing last outing for the brothers, if not for the presence of Marilyn Monroe. It's just one scene, but because it's Marilyn Monroe, it stands out more. The DVD cover certainly wants you to know that. Monroe's image is far more visible than any of the film's 3 stars. As you can see, this is a classic example of a before they were famous repackaging of a film. This is a Marx Brothers movie that doesn't appear in any of the collections, and it's not one that anybody really stands up for. Why not sell it having one of the biggest stars in history? Doesn't make it any less absurd though. Camp Hell is a very obscure horror movie from 2007. I bet you many people are scratching their heads right now, going, what's a Camp Hell? The movie stars Bruce Davidson, Andrew McCarthy, and Dana Delaney. Most notably, however, Jesse Eisenberg, who at the time was already a well-established actor, agreed to appear in the film as a favor to his friends. His screen time amounts to about, 4 minutes. But I'm sure anyone who found this film at a local video store back in 2011, for some reason, might be disappointed given that this was the DVD cover for the film originally. Fresh off Eisenberg's success with The Social Network, Lionsgate, who picked up Camp Hell for home media release, decided to sell a movie on the actor who was barely in the film. They slapped his face on the DVD via a classic floating head, and we got this. This one got a bit infamous, to the point where Eisenberg personally sued Lionsgate for $3 million for overusing his name to sell the movie. And guess what? He seemingly won. Good for him. Doesn't make this any less of a classic bait and switch, though. I will say it's better than this alternate DVD cover I found with Jesse Eisenberg, which heavily resembles the cover art to the 2011 film The Right, released around the same time. Now that's just plain spooky. If you think about it, in a way, Follow That Bird might honestly be one of the most depressing films ever. The movie, the first major Sesame Street film, follows Big Bird as he's placed in a program to live with a family of other birds. Big Bird escapes, and then has to go on a long journey to get back to the gang. The original DVD cover is fine, basically a reprint of the poster, but then there's this re-release in 2009 that I'd like to take a look at. Looks good enough. There's Big Bird, Grover, Oscar, the Count, Elmo. Wait a minute. What is Elmo doing on the cover of this movie? He's literally in the film for like a split second. Okay, it's pretty obvious why they emphasize Elmo in a post-1980s Sesame Street world, but at the time the character could be described as being very minor. It gets worse in the back of the cover though, where Elmo is somehow even more prominently featured. Ay ay ay. Man, if kids see that cover, watch the movie, they might be less devastated by the concept, and more by the fact that they have to play a game of, where's Elmo? Later prints fixed this, but still, this is a major oopsie. Somehow, this isn't even the only absurd misleading marketing shenanigan involved with a Warner Brothers owned property. A back-of-the-box release of the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie features Tweety in it, even though there are no actual Tweety shorts in the film proper. Warner's, ruining childhoods since 1996. Seven Psychopaths is a really underappreciated black comedy from director Martin McDonagh. It's a rather sadistic take on the film industry and the characters who inhabit it. Of course, you wouldn't know that by looking at its DVD cover, which seems to portray it as a gung-ho Tarantino 2000s edgy cool knockoff. I don't even know how to begin to describe this mess. It's pretty clear all parties involved with this property didn't actually watch the movie, and instead the first words that came to mind were awesome. The guy with the gun on the cover? That sells. It's a movie about violent characters? Cool. Let's overrepresent that in an image. Did we miss the entire point of the film? Yes. Does that really matter? No. Neat, you just described my entire experience with this cover. This is a pretty classic case of a film being sold as something it really isn't. There are thousands and thousands of examples of this in the industry, so I won't belabor the point, but it feels like little effort was even conceived at the drawing board stage. Little Fish Strange Pond is a 2009 direct-to-DVD independent black comedy starring Matthew Modine and Callum Blue. This movie is largely an obscure motion picture, but it does feature a scene of Zach Galifianakis. The same year the film was released, Galifianakis starred in the mega comedy blockbuster The Hangover, which gave his career a huge boost. So when it came time to give it a proper release on DVD, Little Fish Strange Pond got retitled in something more genetically silly in Frenemy. The cover went from this to this, featuring a very badly photoshopped figure of Galifianakis' face, which was clearly done to make it look like more of a straightforward hard comedy, in the style of something like The Hangover. Okay, we dealt with DVD covers that overemphasized a small role before they were famous, bigger star in the film, but usually they'll still keep the titles. However, with Frenemy, what we have here is a case of a DVD cover that got a complete overhaul in the editing room. Anyone who had just watched The Hangover, coming in expecting Zach Galifianakis to appear in much of the picture, is going to be heavily disappointed. Not only was the title changed, but the tone was clearly altered to make the movie look a lot different from its original dark comedy roots. This is a classic case of trying to overemphasize something in the marketing. This was a little scene movie from a little studio, so why not place the emphasis on the big actor who was just in a big comedy recently, even though you could probably count his number of minutes on screen on your finger. I have to imagine it probably got a few people to pick up some copies, so it wasn't exactly the worst idea. Still, put on the list alongside Love Happy and Camp Hell as examples of coulda, woulda, shouldn't have. Near Dark, Catherine Bigelow's 1987 neo-western horror movie, is one of my favorite vampire pictures, because on paper the premise is about as simple as it gets. It's basically a classic boy meets girl tale, but with the added bonus that one of the main characters just so happens to have a taste for blood. Of course, if you were searching for a local video store in the 2000s, early 2010s, You wouldn't know that by this DVD cover. Yep, as you can tell by the overemphasizing of the faces, we're in the era of Twilight. Even though Near Dark represents the complete opposite of what that film is. While it's a romance, it has a far cooler, more Western magnetic vibe to it, so to try to sell it as Twilight is just insulting to me. That's not even the end of the Twilight comparison, though. Aside from lovers being represented in a similar position, the way the gang of vampires line up, it's almost like they're trying to make them look like they're part of the Cullen clan or something. These are the worst kind of DVD covers, because it's one thing to overplay your hands on a popular actor or character, it's another to change the approach or tone in a way that goes against the very product that you're trying to sell. If you came in expecting a Twilight-type movie with Near Dark, then I don't know what to tell you. There are so many other examples I probably could have found, but these 9 that I just listed are, in my mind, some of the most notorious examples of DVD packaging gone awry, done entirely in an attempt to please more modern audiences. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please list examples of what you think are incredibly misleading DVD cover images in the comments down below. See ya.